China.
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 On May 15th, 2026, Air Force One lifts off from Beijing Capital International Airport. Before it clears Chinese airspace, President Trump tells reporters that arms sales to Taiwan are, in his own words, a very good negotiating chip with Beijing. The US readout says, Xi offered to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. China's official statement does not mention Hormuz at all. The US says China agreed to address rare earth supply concerns. China says its export controls remain lawful and in force. 2 leaders, 2 days, 1 summit, 2 completely different accounts of what was resolved. In a defense components plant in Huntsville, Alabama, a procurement director is staring at a spreadsheet. His August shipment of dysprosium, the rare earth mineral his F-35 magnets cannot be built without, is still not confirmed. The summit just ended. He is still waiting. Every headline is calling this a breakthrough. Here's what the gap between those 2 press releases actually tells you, and what is coming in the next 90 days. Why did the world's 2 largest economies go to war over tariffs, and then discover they couldn't actually fight? Why did China spend 20 years building a weapon inside a partnership America was paying for? And why, after 2 days in Beijing, did both leaders leave claiming victory while signing 2 completely different versions of what they agreed? Those 3 questions have one chain connecting them, and that chain runs from a trade deal signed in 2001 to a mineral embargo in 2025, to a readout gap that is still open today. It is December 11th, 2001. China signs the World Trade Organization accession paperwork, and from that single moment, the most consequential economic integration in human history begins. For the previous 2 decades, the US and China have traded at arm's length. Now, the barriers dissolve. American companies can access Chinese labor at a fraction of domestic costs. The economics are irresistible. The numbers move fast. In 1972, total US-China bilateral trade is $95.9 million. By 2024, it is $575 billion. Between 2001 and 2018 alone, growing trade deficits with China eliminate 3.7 million American jobs, 2.8 million of them in manufacturing. In Gary, Indiana, a machinist earns $28 an hour making industrial components. In 2004, his plant ships its equipment to Wuhan and closes. He does not know what is happening simultaneously, 7,000 miles away, in the mineral-rich provinces of Inner Mongolia, Jiangxi, and Sichuan. In Guangdong, a factory floor absorbs thousands of new workers at a fraction of that cost. Both men are living the stated logic of globalization. Neither of them can see what the Chinese government is quietly building while American executives calculate labor cost savings. Because while the partnership is being celebrated in boardrooms and trade summits, China is methodically acquiring control over the 17 rare earth minerals that every advanced technology produced in any factory on Earth requires to function. By 2010, China controls 60% of global rare earth production, and here's the number that matters, 85% of global processing capacity. You could mine every ounce of rare earth in American soil and still need to send it to China to be refined. The Gary machinist's plant is gone, the Guangdong factory floor is running, and in Beijing, a government is sitting on a weapon that the American economy does not yet know it has handed them. In April 2025, they use it. April 2nd, 2025, the Trump administration announces tariffs of 145% on all Chinese imports, the most aggressive trade action the United States has taken since the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930. The stated objective: force China to the table, reduce a trade deficit that has run above $300 billion every year for 2 decades. Beijing's finance ministry response arrives the same day. The statement is direct. Even if the US continues to impose higher tariffs, it will no longer make economic sense and will become a joke in the history of world economy. Then comes the real response. China's Ministry of Commerce announces export controls on 7 categories of rare earth elements: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium, yttrium. These are not obscure minerals. Terbium and dysprosium are essential components in the permanent magnets of every F-35 fighter jet, every electric vehicle motor, and every wind turbine generator. Samarium is a critical input for precision-guided munitions. There is no short-term substitute. There is no stockpile large enough to absorb prolonged disruption. The procurement director in Huntsville, Alabama, the one watching his August shipment now, calls his supply chain officer that afternoon. The question is simple: how long can we operate without Chinese rare earths? The answer is months, not years. The power in this story is an administration that designs tariffs as its primary weapon, and discovers the other side built one it had never fully accounted for. The pressure falls on every U.S. defense manufacturer, every technology company, and every allied military with procurement tied to American supply chains. The price, as it always is in this kind of story, is paid by the people who had no vote on the arrangement. The tariff war that both sides declare they will fight to the end lasts 38 days at peak intensity. Before the chain begins, one number that changes the scale of everything you just watched. China controls not just the mining of rare earths, it controls 85% of the world's processing capacity for those minerals. America could open every rare earth mine on its own soil tomorrow, and would still need to ship the ore to Chinese refineries to make it usable. The rare earth weapon is not about where the minerals are buried. It is about who has built the infrastructure to turn them into something an F-35 can fly with. And that arrangement creates the conditions for the meeting neither side can avoid. At 145% US tariffs and 125% Chinese counter tariffs, the economics of direct bilateral trade collapse. American retailers warn of empty shelves. Chinese exporters sit on goods with no buyers. Within 38 days, both sides signal readiness to talk. Geneva, May 2025, tariffs reduced to 30% US and 10% China for 90 days. The rare earth controls paused, not resolved, paused. October 2025, Busan, South Korea, the APEC summit. Trump and Xi meet in person. A soybean deal is struck, the tariff truce is extended. Both sides describe a positive atmosphere, what neither mentions publicly. China's Phase 1 deal from 2020 committed to $200 billion in US purchases over 2 years and delivered approximately $120 billion, 60% of what was promised. The pattern of grand commitments and thin delivery is now established, which meant that when the Beijing summit arrived in May 2026, it was not a surprise, it was inevitable. Follow the money and you find what each side actually comes for. The US needs China to pressure Iran into reopening Hormuz. Gas prices at 4-year highs, midterms approaching. China needs the US to ease AI chip export controls. Its technology ambitions structurally stalled. Without the most advanced processors, neither side gets what it actually needs. This is where the chain gets interesting. The official outcomes: $17 billion annually in US agricultural purchases through 2028, 200 Boeing aircraft, no timeline, a framework for rare earth discussions, no specifics. Xi says China wants to help on Hormuz. In the US, readout only. Trump calls Taiwan arms sales a very good negotiating chip. On Air Force One, in no official document. The Council on Foreign Relations describes what the summit produces as mutually useful ambiguity. Brookings, thin on substance? The Atlantic Council, a big show with little to show for it. And in Huntsville, Alabama, the procurement director checks the Chinese readout. It says his country's rare earth export controls remain lawful and in force. His August shipment is still not confirmed. Neither side blinked. Both sides said they did. Since Air Force One left Beijing, here is what has changed. China's rare earth export controls remain in force, case by case. Review, no timeline, no commitment to normalization. The Strait of Hormuz remains at approximately 5% of pre-war traffic despite Xi's stated desire to help reopen it. Taiwan arms sales are undecided, described by the US president as a negotiating instrument. The tariff truce is running on a clock, and 3 follow-up summits are already scheduled, which tells you that neither side believes the core issues will be resolved before they need to meet again. What the Beijing summit actually reveals is the structure of the trap. The 2 most powerful economies on Earth have built a dependency so complete that neither can impose the consequences it threatens without immediately damaging itself. The US cannot decouple. Consumer price spikes and supply chain collapse arrive within weeks. China cannot lose the US market. 10 to 20 million export sector jobs go with it. The procurement director in Huntsville is still waiting for his dysprosium shipment. The summit that was supposed to resolve his supply chain produced 2 press releases that say opposite things. He has 3 more summits to wait for. Here's the question worth leaving in the comments. Do you think either side will actually give something up before December? Or is this just another pause on the way to a bigger confrontation? America kept the market, China kept the minerals, and both left Beijing pretending the other one had blinked. The story is not over. 3 more summits are already scheduled before the end of 2026. Each one will produce its own readout. Each one will claim progress on the same 3 unresolved issues. The question this channel exists to answer is, what is actually changing beneath the language, before it shows up in your supply chain, your energy bill, or your retirement account? If you want to understand what is coming before it happens, subscribe. That is exactly what this channel is for. Every crisis has a history. Every history has a ledger. This has been the Meridian Ledger.